Towards the mid-1960s, George Harrison was just starting to come into his own as a songwriter, gradually stepping out from the towering shadow of his bandmates. Although the Beatles' albums were dominated by one great tune after another from John Lennon and Paul McCartney, Revolver marked a significant shift. It was the first time Harrison began to gain something closer to equal footing, contributing 3 songs that showcased not only his growing confidence, but also his increasingly distinct musical identity. His writing was no longer tentative. It was searching, exploratory, and deeply personal. While his contributions were far more muted for the conceptual album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the Beatles' producer George Martin had some reservations about the song Harrison brought to the table. Opening up side 2 of the record, Within You, Without You was a bold exploration of Harrison's fascination with Indian music and philosophy. Where earlier Beatles songs had merely incorporated touches of Indian instrumentation, such as the sitar appearing as a color within a Western framework, this composition went far beyond that. There wasn't a conventional Western rock instrument to be found. Instead, the track was dominated by Harrison alongside a group of Indian session musicians, performing on instruments like sitar, tabla, and dilruba, weaving together a hypnotic, meditative soundscape. Lyrically, the song was just as ambitious. Rather than focusing on romance or everyday storytelling, Harrison delivered a message about ego, illusion, and the expansion of human consciousness. It reflected his deepening engagement with Eastern spirituality, particularly Indian philosophy, which had begun to shape not only his music, but his worldview. At that point, Harrison wasn't just experimenting with a new sound, he was actively reshaping what a Beatles song could be. While John and McCartney were still largely working within the framework of Western pop, even at their most experimental, Harrison was looking outward, treating music as a vehicle for spiritual and cultural exploration. That shift didn't always sit comfortably within the band's established identity, but it marked an important turning point in broadening their sonic palette and redefining the possibilities of popular music. When asked about recording the song, however, George Martin made his feelings clear. Reflecting years later in The Beatles' Paperback Writer, he acknowledged the effort behind it, but admitted that it stood apart from the rest of the album in a way that was not entirely positive. He described it, with all deference to George, as a rather dreary piece, heavily influenced by Harrison's obsession with Indian music at the time. Despite that criticism, Martin's role in shaping the track was significant. He worked closely with Harrison on the scoring, incorporating a Western string orchestra into the arrangement. At the same time, Harrison brought in musicians from the Indian Music Association to ensure authenticity in the performance of traditional instruments. The result was a hybrid piece that attempted to bridge 2 very different musical worlds. Even though Martin had extensive experience crafting orchestral arrangements for the Beatles, he admitted that this song presented a unique challenge. Indian music operates on systems of scales, tunings, and improvisation that differ fundamentally from Western classical traditions. Many of the tonal structures were unfamiliar to him, and rather than attempting to fully notate them in a conventional way, he had to find creative solutions. Martin approached the problem by writing sweeping string parts that mimicked the fluid improvisational qualities of Indian performance. Instead of rigid harmonic progression, he focused on texture, movement, and atmosphere, allowing the arrangement to breathe in a way that complemented the musician's spontaneous expressions. It was less about controlling the music and more about responding to it. This collaborative process pushed Martin into unfamiliar territory. Accustomed to structured compositions with clearly defined roles for each instrument, he now had to adapt to a musical language that prioritized feel, intuition, and subtle variation over formal precision. In doing so, he effectively became a translator between cultures, helping to realize Harrison's vision while still shaping it into something that could coexist within a Beatles album. Even so, the contrast between Within You, Without You and the surrounding tracks on Sgt. Pepper's was striking. It's not hard to see why the song might have felt out of place when compared to McCartney's bright, musical contributions like Getting Better and Fixing a Hole. Where those songs were concise, tuneful, and rooted in Western pop sensibilities, Harrison's piece unfolded slowly, without a conventional hook, inviting contemplation rather than immediate engagement. Yet Harrison's influence was not confined to his own compositions. Even with his limited contributions to the album, his fascination with Indian music seeped into the broader sound of the band. In Getting Better, for instance, a subtle drone-like texture emerges in the midsection, echoing the sustained tonal qualities of Indian instruments. Similarly, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds features passages that linger on a single note, creating a hypnotic effect reminiscent of the sonic landscapes Harrison was exploring. That influence only deepened in the years that followed. Harrison continued to push further into psychedelic and Eastern-inspired territory, crafting the swirling, disorienting atmosphere of Blue Jay Way and later recording The Inner Light in India with local musicians. These works demonstrated that his interest in Indian music was not a passing phase, but a fundamental aspect of his artistic identity. Although Harrison maintained a deep appreciation for Indian music throughout his life, his approach evolved over time. As he moved into his solo career, he began to integrate those influences more subtly rather than building entire compositions around them. The sitar, once a defining feature of his sound, appeared less frequently. In its place, Harrison developed his signature slide guitar style, a deeply expressive technique that allowed him to capture the microtonal nuances and emotional depth he had admired in Indian music. In many ways, that transition represented a synthesis of East and West. Rather than choosing one tradition over the other, Harrison found a way to translate the spiritual and melodic essence of Indian music into a Western instrumental context. His slide guitar became his voice, capable of conveying the same sense of longing, introspection, and transcendence that had first drawn him to those sounds. So, while George Martin may have considered Within You Without You somewhat dreary, its significance cannot be measured solely by conventional standards of pop songwriting. It stands as a bold artistic statement, one that challenged expectations, expanded musical boundaries, and revealed a side of George Harrison that would continue to shape his work long after the Beatles had come to an end.